Hi, Equals. This is Kim. Welcome to Kim Perfect TV. If you're new here at this channel, we talk about LGBTQ issues, and you're welcome to stay. Love to have you. Love to have you comment below. And today we're going to start a series of vlogs on continuums and how sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression fit into continuums. So, for example, if we think about the wonder that is human diversity, we never think about human diversity as being, people are either blonde or they have black hair, or they are tall or they are short, or they are large or they're small, or they're small boned or they're big boned, or they have literally white skin, or they have literally black skin. None of those things exist. Think about it. All right? There's all this variation in between. And so we call those a continuum. And a continuum is simply a line, right, with an extreme at either end. So that example of white skin or black skin, or better yet, let's say white hair and black hair, might be, because white being all colors and black being the absence of color, they could be the extremes on a continuum of hair color. And then all of us fit somewhere on this line in terms of our hair color. If you're with me so far, we know that this continuum exists for every other part of human beings, their bodies, the way their brains work, all of that. I mean, intelligence is not just you're either smart or you're dumb. There's a, if we're using an IQ scale, it's a 0 to whatever the highest is, 250. I don't know what the highest has ever been, but let's just say they are. You're not either 0 or 250. You're somewhere on this line in between. All right. So continuum has to do with the way our bodies are diverse, and it also has to do with the way our brains are diverse. And by the way, look it up, Google it. Scientists don't think they understand yet a lot about how the brain works. They understand some, and they learn every day, but they do not believe that they have figured it all out. And that's fine. Let's then talk about sexual orientation. So before I start, remember that sexual orientation does not predict gender identity. Gender identity does not predict gender expression. Gender expression does not predict gender identity, and gender expression does not predict sexual orientation. Gender identity does not predict gender expression, and gender identity does not predict sexual orientation. None of those three things predicts the other. So if you're into probabilities and statistics, there are all these different options that people could have around gender identity, sexual orientation, and gender expression. Today we're going to talk sexual orientation. So for some reason, people seem to think that, and with sexual orientation, nothing simple, okay, but that you're either heterosexual or you're homosexual. And then we have to be clear on whether we're talking about behaviors or thoughts, because you can be homosexual without ever having engaged in homosexual activity, and you can be heterosexual without ever having engaged in heterosexual activity. All of those things are possible, right? Because when we're talking about sexual orientation, we're talking about attraction, and we might be able to be talking about behavior. When you act upon your attraction, that's the behavior. So right now we're going to talk about what goes on in the brain. All right? So that's your attraction, who you're attracted to. For example, here's Susie. And Susie has forever, since the beginning of her time, been attracted to the most masculine male guy possible in the world. All right? And she has never had a thought, an action, an impulse, a dream that goes against that extreme heterosexuality. let's go to the other end, and let's call this person Deborah. And Deborah has forever and ever, in all of her time, been attracted to the most girly girl, all right, in the world. And she has never had a thought, dream, action, impulse that is not geared towards the most girly girl of all girls in the world. So we could call her an extreme, and she doesn't probably really exist, an extreme of homosexuality. So homosexuality, heterosexuality. And remember, these people, both Susie and Deborah, may never have engaged in sexual activity at all. Then, like hair color, we've got all of this space in between. Say Susie, over here, has an erotic dream one night about somebody of the same sex. Now she suddenly moves in here, because she's no longer our paragon of extreme heterosexuality. Her brain did something and she had a dream, right? So say she's in 6th grade and she decides that she's going to practice kissing those really, really, really male, masculine guys with her best friend, who is also been assigned female at birth. And they practice kissing. All right, so now we move a little bit in. But, okay, so Susie's here. She's still very much a heterosexual person, but she's not the extreme. She's somewhere in here. Same thing with Deborah over here. So Deborah may have decided that she wants to go to the prom, and at her school you can only go to the prom if you go with a guy. And so, as an opposite sex couple. And so she accepts the invitation of a guy, one of her classmates, to go to the prom. And after the prom, he reaches in and gives her a kiss. And she decides to give it a try, and so she kisses him back. Oh, now she's down here on this line. Over here on this line, she's no longer this extreme, total homosexual person, because she's had this other experience. All right, all of this space in between those extremes, I would claim, is a variation on bisexuality. And bisexual means that you are attracted to some extent, boys or girls, or you've had activity that in some extent identify with boys and girls, or men and women, or people who don't identify as one of those gender binaries. And so there's a lot of room in here. And most, Deborah over here and Susie over here probably wouldn't identify as bisexual. Susie over here would identify as heterosexual, and Deborah over here would identify as homosexual. Just because those little things that happened in their life, were not a big deal. Now, if Deborah decides she kind of liked that kiss, and she ends up being with this prom date for a while, maybe they even get married, and they go through life, and life happens, and they'd get divorced, and then she starts dating a woman. Now, Deborah has not switched her sexual orientation, folks. She's always been, to some extent, bisexual, and she's just, now that the one relationship is over, she's just decided she's going to date this particular woman that she met. Now, she hasn't turned lesbian, she hasn't turned homosexual, none of that. Even while she was married, she was not heterosexual, although she was in a heterosexual relationship. She's always been bisexual and pretty much always will. But Deborah gets to decide how she wants to identify. It's a respect, it's dignity to let people decide how they're going to identify. Hello, Frisbee. So, a little break in the film while the cat passed by. Here's his tail. Okay, he's on his way. All right, so So while Deborah may not identify as bisexual, well, Deborah at this point probably would identify as bisexual. Susie over here, who only, experimented with kissing at a sleepover when she was 11, and, maybe she liked it a little bit. I kissed a girl and I liked it. Okay. But she doesn't have to identify as bisexual. She can identify as heterosexual if that seems more real to her. All right. Then there are people who fit more here in the middle. They equally are attracted to men, and they're equally attracted to women. And sometimes they'll date a woman, sometimes they'll be dating a man. When they stop dating a woman and start dating a man, or vice versa, nothing big has happened in their life. All right, they're not suddenly becoming straight or suddenly becoming gay. They are simply bisexual. We tend not to see bisexual folks because outwardly we kind of identify them with what kind of relationship they're in. So if they're in a same-sex relationship, we identify them as homosexual. If they're in an opposite-sex relationship, we identify them as being heterosexual. It's an erasure of bisexuality that we don't see this. And sometimes it takes a while just in get our brains wrapped around this idea. But here's the point, folks. Sexual orientation, like hair color, skin color, body size, all these other pieces of us as humans and the way our brains work, intellect, all those kinds of things, all happen on a continuum, not as a binary, either or. Right? If we're stuck and we can't get past this idea that there is either or, right, then we're going to have difficulty just understanding other people, because we're going to expect them to be this one thing or the other and not understand that they can be all these things in between. Now, a point was brought up when I was talking about this yesterday with a friend, and that is, where do asexual people fit on here? So asexual people are people who are not attracted to anyone. So they kind of exist outside the line because they're not attracted to anyone. We could probably have another continuum, is people who are very attracted to people and people who are not attracted to people, in which case asexual would be down here. I'm not sure what the polar opposite of asexual would be. If you know that, please put it in the comments below. But there are asexual folks out there who just, they're just not interested in it. Usually they've had some sort of experience, that they've engaged in some sort of experience, whether they've just kissed somebody, gone on a date, maybe they've been married for a while. All of those things may happen, so they may have sexual activity that you might see them as heterosexual or homosexual, depending on what kind of activity they've been involved in. But they may actually still be asexual. All right, folks. I know this isn't easy, but here, and if you think about it, I pretty much just called everybody in the world bisexual. And yeah, I actually kind of believe that. However, I also respect people's rights to self-identify. And if somebody wants to insist that they're 100% heterosexual, have been all their life, great. I am right there for them to be able to self-identify. And the same thing with everybody else. So anyway, folks, today's lesson on sexual orientation as a continuum. Anyway, I'd love to engage in conversation with you in the comments below. Please, if you like this video, give me a thumbs up, hit the red subscribe button, tap the bell, and you'll be notified every time I put up a new video. Meanwhile, have a great one, equals. Bye.